Hi, everybody. I'm Karen Curry Parker. Welcome to the Understanding Human Design podcast. And I am so excited today to have somebody who I have actually been kind of stalking for years as my guest on our podcast today. Rosy Aronson is here, and she is an artist, an author, and blossoming guide with a master's in expressive art therapy, a doctorate in intuitive listening and the creative arts, an avid permission giver, which is like a fabulous, fabulous title. I love that. Pressure dissolver and embracer of the unknown. Rosie believes that we're literally designed to blossom. And the more each of us radically trusts, honors, and expresses our true nature, the more magic we create together. She is the creator of the 64 Faces of Awakening, and many of you who are students of human design will recognize her Wisdom Keepers Oracle deck that's based on the 64 gates in the Chinese I Ching and the 64 gates, of course, from human design. She has also created the Wisdom Keepers Inner Guidebook, the 64 Faces of Awakening coloring book, and the Wisdom Wheel of Integrity course and workbook to help you reflect essential healing archetypes that lie at the foundation of our universe and at the foundation of your personal narrative. So, Rosie, we've had the great pleasure of chatting a little bit before we got started, and it's just been like, best friend girlfriend time, and I love it. So I am just really so excited to share you with anyone who maybe has never heard of your work before, and hopefully give those people who have really seen the beauty of your work and the beauty of your cards. And I know you've got a copy of your book over there, so I'm going to ask you to show everybody in a minute. Just share with us the story of how you came up with this understanding of the archetypes and how they work.
Oh my gosh. Well, can I just say thank you for inviting me into this conversation, and thank you for the incredible service that you have been doing for so many years. I am a mutual stalker, like a total Karen fan. I just think you're phenomenal, and I can't believe you do everything you do with 8 children and dogs. I just learned you have dogs as well.
Thank you.
Beyond anything I can imagine. So it's such a pleasure to be here, and thank you for that introduction. So your question was just how did I end up? Are you mostly interested in kind of how the wisdom?
Well, let's start at the very beginning, because I find that anyone who has a history of working with human design, especially, usually has a very interesting story of how they found human design, or I always like to say how human design found you. So tell us your story about how you first got intrigued with human design and connected to human design.
Okay, so the first time I encountered human design, I was in the living room of a dear friend of mine whose name is Val Tate in San Francisco, and she was also a student at the California Institute of Integral Studies together with me, and we were both studying expressive arts therapy, and we both had little babies. So I just was hanging out in her living room, and I just saw this chart on her table, and it seemed kind of mechanical and weird. I tend to be kind of a juicy, colorful, little psychedelic type, lots of primal screaming and big paintings. So there was something about the chart that wasn't a total match aesthetically with my soulful kind of explorations up until then, but it just grabbed me. Like when she started telling, I'm like, what is this? Tell me a little bit about this. And she started talking a little bit about the intersection between openness and definition and, free will versus surrender. I don't know. It was just this whole thing. And I thought, I have got to learn more about that. And so I asked her, do you get a reading? And she said, yeah, this woman, this wonderful woman named Carol Zimmerman gave me a reading. You might as well give her a call. And so I got this reading from Carol, who did a very good job, very solid introduction to my design. And that was it. Because, I had been working in the therapy, the psychotherapy world for many years and studying in many different ways. And I loved how surprised I was by what I learned about myself. I loved it. I like to be blown away. I like people to tell me things like, oh, I never knew that about myself. So that was one of the biggest things that really drew me in. And then, of course, I had to get my husband's chart. I had to get my daughter's chart. And then the next thing you know, also because I'm kind of sacral splenic, so I'm very spontaneous and intuitive in my approach. I just gathered everybody's birthday and then I just started going to town and actually like giving readings with absolutely no qualifications whatsoever, just channeling basically. And I was noticing that people were really resonating, and I thought, okay, I better learn this. I better really like take this more seriously. That I had like some therapeutic background, so I kind of had a sense of like how to honor people's sovereignty and not be too boundary invasive and holding it lightly and stuff. But anyway, so then I went to Jovian Archive and I did the full analyst training. And I want to give you a personal shout out because I remember, first of all, I enjoyed it very much because it gave me a very solid foundation in human design. And Linda Bunnell was one of my main teachers. Jenna Oblivion was a teacher. Ra came into a few of my classes, and I learned so much. But I want to say it was an article I read of yours that you had written about generators and the river, like crossing the river, going from river stone to river stone or river rock to river rock. And then Richard Rudd's writing that touched my heart. Like I found that the analyst training was just so empowering for people. Like it was so practical and empowering, but you and Richard Rudd reached me in a much deeper place. So, and that happened very early on, and I just wanted to acknowledge you for that. I think you planted a seed in me that there was permission to take this knowledge and let it pour through my own vessel and come out with a unique voice that maybe was more embracing of the feminine, or maybe more embracing of the creative process. Maybe not necessarily like saying all therapy is like the worst thing you could possibly do, or that attachment parenting is the worst thing that one could possibly do, right? So that's like a whole other conversation there. But anyway, so I did the whole training, and then it came time to sign the contract. And I remember I was told that to sign the contract, I had to kind of commit to only presenting human design in its purest form and not integrate it with other things, which is just not me. I've never learned anything and not folded it into something else that I knew. I'm just like, that's what I do. I synthesize. That's what I do. So and maybe also as a 3-5, there's just so much pain. So anyway, so I decided not to become an official analyst. And it was a sad moment for me because I loved the community. I loved my teachers. I felt I had something unique and different to offer the community. And I really do believe, like we were talking about before you pressed record, that human design is asking all of us to evolve it together through our unique prisms. And that's like, this is this incredible mosaic potential. And we're all carrying the seed for our own contribution. And so it was a big loss for me to feel like I wasn't able to stay connected to that community. But it also did free me because then I was able to just kind of, well, okay, I'm kind of on my own, so I'm going to do my own thing with it. And oh my God, I could go in so many different directions, but I can say that I started giving a lot of readings. And then this is the other thing, like I'm not very good at like repeating myself. Like if I've said it once, I'm like kind of done with it, unless I'm really digesting and integrating it. So after a while, and also because my background is in psychotherapy, like the juicy part is where we get stuck, where things get a little complicated, where we have to do some refining work. And the pressure of having to like give someone a reading that they can take with them that is going to do justice to their nature, that's going to answer their questions, that's going to empower them to take this in a good way and, incorporate it into their life. It was too much pressure for me. So I started to just kind of say, well, if you want to work with me, I'll do a reading, but we have to have an introductory session where I get to know you. I get to know what's happening in your life. What do you care about? What do you want to know about? Where are you struggling? And then I could give the reading, keeping that in mind, and then we would have follow-up sessions. So that's where the exciting stuff is for me, like where we where all that refinement is. And then even that became a little bit like I started to kind of feel like, okay, I've been doing this for a really long time. I think I want to start reaching more people. And that's when I created the Design to Blossom course, which is now also a book. And that's where I really consciously incorporated human design with the gene keys, which I had been exploring ever since it kind of started coming out, with the expressive arts and with transpersonal psychology and humanistic psychology. And I think that, you know, I drew people to me who loved human design, but maybe felt it was being presented in kind of a rigid way, or where people were getting a little stuck in that label identification. Yeah, and also people who are interested in finding ways to kind of integrate the human design system with the gene keys, which in some ways seem to be paradoxical, but they're siblings, they're cousins, and they're also extremely supplementary. Yeah. And then many other things happened after that.
So I love your story because, you know, I studied with Ra late 1999, 2000 in Sedona. And, you know, was a certified analyst with Jovian, and also chose at a certain point to leave for very similar reasons. And, you know, at the time I really love and appreciate Jovian. I still go to Jovian oftentimes, you know, when I'm like, what did Ross say about this? Or what did he think about this? Because I think there is an important place in the community for people to hold, first of all, the purity of the original teachings and the mechanics of it, because there is a certain mechanics that needs to be, it's kind of like, if you're going to go do scientific research, you've got to understand the basics of like how do molecules interact with each other under certain catalytic conditions, right? So you need to have that strong foundation in those mechanical pieces. And there's an irony to me in this system, and it's a system that teaches you to follow your own inner authority, and yet it's a pedagogy. So how do you like work within a pedagogy and have your own authority? And so it was a very painful, for me, same thing, a very painful extrication out of the community to just sort of say, I can't shut down these other parts of myself, these other experiences of my own inner knowingness. You know, I have the channel 1-8, which to me gives me a lot of knowingness about this is what I'm going to say, you know, and I couldn't deny that part of myself and force myself to follow a system that wasn't inclusive enough for me personally. And I think that there's such a great opportunity, particularly as we're in this, I think, on the cusp of this evolution that, or this revolution maybe, that is inclusive in every way, that this whole binary Republican, Democrat, masks, no mask, this, whatever, that, whatever, you know, if you go to Facebook, it's so everything. I look at these like this, that, this, that, this, that, and I'm thinking this is all just deck chairs being moved around on a boat. And you know, the boat still is the same boat but it's moving forward. So we need to figure out what are we going to do. And so I think this time is so fundamental in the human design community for all of us to start looking at how can we bring the most amount of light and support everyone who's looking for answers, how they can find their path. And for many of them, I think many of my students have studied with Jovian, have studied with Richard, have studied with Kim Gold, with you, with even with Zeno, when Zeno was alive, you know, they go everywhere because they know there's something in this that has a truth to it that they resonate and feel, but they also know, hey, I've got to find my way. And I think you do such a beautiful job of integrating this in such a harmonious way that allows people to kind of drop into it and go, okay, I'm going to craft my own path. And I think a lot of people feel, and maybe it's because I personally believe, because a lot of the bulk of my research comes from trauma, maybe because I think that most people are traumatized, that I would say 98% of people on the planet are traumatized, that deconditioning is much more complex than just following strategies. Sometimes you really have deep epigenetic pain. Sometimes it's not even your own pain, it's pain that you're carrying on an ancestral lineage that has to get cleared out of the design crystal on a physical level for you to be able to really integrate your soul purpose and your life purpose.
Yeah.
So, which brings me to my next conversation with you. So, you somehow in this journey really began to embrace archetypes as a healing tool.
Mm.
And doing that through your Wisdom Keeper series. Tell me a little bit about how you landed on the Wisdom Keepers.
Okay, I will do my best. And I will say that I've had a love of archetypal explorations for many, many years before
Mm-hmm.
that. So my first expressive arts therapy education in Denmark was a Jungian, it was
Ah,
in school. So that was always a big part of my life. And then I also wrote a children's book, which is actually just the prelude to a longer tale, which is totally archetypal. And interestingly, it's about 7 seals. And
ah,
I knew this. I wrote it in the early '90s, so it's way before I knew about the gene keys. So this is kind of, I've always been drawn to archetypal exploration. So just want to preface that. When I did this project, it was not a project at all. It was. I ran a very full counseling practice. I was involved in a million different community activities, and I was really despairing over what was happening in the world and these divisions that you're talking about, which have, I mean, they're really amplified right now, but this has been going on for quite some time.
mm-hmm.
And I needed something to do to take care of my little heart.
Mm-hmm.
It was really, and my husband and my daughter said, Rosie, because it's been so long since I'd really been engaged in art, like any kind of creative arts process. And they said, just come with us. We're taking you to the art store. Just get something that doesn't make a mess, that you could do in between clients, that you don't have to like have a giant canvas or whatever. So I got like a pad of paper and a black marker, and I just started doodling.
Mm.
That's how it started. And then the next doodle, I thought, God, what would happen if I put the outline of a face and doodled inside of it?
Mm.
And that became the 22nd gate, the gene key of grace, the wisdom key of grace.
Tattooed on my arm, the 22nd gate.
That's amazing. She was the first one who came through. And there was something so healing for me, like both about the relaxing my nervous system and engaging in this very like deep meditative process, but also the eye contact with this being who I felt had kind of arrived at a place of trust and relaxation and compassion that I longed to arrive at. So once I did her, I'm like, God, who else wants to come? And then came the next one, and then came the next one. And I'd get these intuitive hits like, oh, this next one is from Africa. I don't know. I don't know what it is. And sometimes when I would be communing with them or drawing them, I'd get like a hit on their story, like how they came to their wisdom, how they came to embody the archetype. And it was always through some kind of trauma or suffering, which I think is the case for most of us.
Mm-hmm.
And I just kept pouring through just one after the other. And then at some point, I'm like, well, God, how many am I going to do? And then came the thought, well, why not 64? Right, because I did the human design, I got the gene keys. And so it was only towards the end that I started more consciously to think about archetypes and where they might fit inside of the matrix. And it wasn't until after I completed all of them that I started bringing in their stories.
Mm.
And so then I kind of channeled the stories. And again, this is again, this diversity, this celebration of diversity, right? And what I love about art is you can have 64 completely different humans with completely different life experiences, and they all can fit into one little box.
Right, exactly.
It can hold paradox. Art holds paradox, right? So anyway, and then as I was kind of completing the stories, I thought, well, maybe I need to like share this with the world in some way. And then I thought, maybe I should, what if I made a deck that people could play with? And that's when I started to more consciously integrate the gene keys and human design also in terms of the spectrum of consciousness, like the shadow, the gift, the city terminology, what this archetype looks like when it's coming from a place of fear, what it looks like when it's coming from a place of service, and what it looks like when it dissolves into the all.
Mm-hmm.
And so, so then then I did the deck, and at first it was a black and white deck, and then I felt like I wanted to color it, and then it became a coloring deck, and then came a coloring book out of it, because other people might want to color it too. And then it just kind of kept evolving, and it's kind of still evolving. It's still finding new ways of expressing itself. It feels like a baby I gave birth to that's kind of, guiding me.
Beautiful, beautiful. I love the story. I didn't know the story before, and now it's like even better. That's awesome. That's awesome. So, so you are, can you show us the cover of your book? Just because I know I see it back.
Oh, the book?
Or you can show us the card. And you said you pulled a card before we did our interview, right?
I did. This is the paperback version of the book, but inside of the deck, there's a little mini version. It's the same book, but it just fits inside the deck. This is for people like me who need bigger letters. And I did pick a card for us, blind. I didn't look, and I asked, what do I need? Also, because I tend to get a little nervous in these situations. And I have so much respect for you, Karen, and this is the first time we're meeting. So I'm like, oh my God, I'm like talking to the goddess of human design. I feel like my path has taken me in so many, I'm like such a scatterbrain. I'm all over the place. So I got the card of naturalness.
Ah, I love that.
Yeah, which was so good, because it's really about inviting all of us to just relax in our own skin and trust that there's a place for all of us. We're not all supposed to be stars in all the different ways. You know what I mean? We all come with our unique offerings and passions and shadows and traumas and lessons. And so that was really helpful for me to choose the wisdom keeper of naturalness.
I love that. I love that. And I love that you are here being your natural self and sharing yourself so beautifully with us. Thank you. So you're going to be speaking this September, I have to get the dates right. I'm so temporally challenged. The 11th through the 13th, is that right?
You know how I know that?
How do you know?
My birthday is the 12th.
Oh, yay. That's so awesome. All right, perfect. So you will be speaking September 11th through the 13th at our International Human Design Conference, where we're going to be featuring, we keep jokingly calling it the Women of Human Design, but it's actually not a joke. It is actually the Women of Human Design. So, and you're going to be speaking a couple of times about archetypes and the wisdom keepers and how to use your cards and your archetypes and all of the integrated wisdom that you have to share with us. So I'm super excited to have you there giving an in-depth exploration of the work that you do. So that is, it's going to be an incredible treat for people who are going to be there. So
I was telling Karen or you before we talked that it's a real honor for me to be included, really. I really appreciate it.
Well, it's time. It's definitely time. So, and like I said, all of my students love your stuff and use it all the time. So I'm eager to share in greater depth, have you share in greater depth your wisdom and what you have brought forth. So thank you so much. Is there, I always like to ask before I end my interviews, this question is a question I ask a lot. And the question is, what do you think is the biggest gift that human design brings to people? And I'm calling human design sort of as an umbrella for all of this, all human design and all of its cousins and it's all of its mutants, the whole family.
I mean, the first word that came to me was liberation. That was the word that came to me. Like, I was thinking about, when I did the Design to Blossom program and I started to weave it together with the Wisdom Keeper theme, it was really about liberating the inner Wisdom Keeper. Like, it feels to me, and liberation from our conditioning, liberation from our self-judgments, liberation from the thought that we're supposed to be anything other than who we are. And in its purity, I feel it's permission to play with life, even to engage playfully with some of the most painful aspects of life. And in a way, it's kind of, ultimately, it's here to liberate us from human design.
No, I
You know what
totally,
You
yeah.
know what I mean? It's like what they say about, the Buddha. What do you get? You take a raft to take you from one side of the river to the other, and then you don't need the raft anymore. Then you let it go. It's kind of, you move from that sort of unconscious incompetence to unconscious competence. Something about freedom.
Hmm.
And also compassion, like compassion and honoring, like, of each other, and that we all get to be different, and yet we're all so deeply connected. And the more we honor who we are, the more naturally we find ways to connect with each other and co-create together. Because I do believe we're moving in that direction
Yeah.
of co-creation, of really like being group entities that are like moving through time and space together, and bringing the new world forward. And so there is that connection between like true individuation connects us.
Yes.
That's so important. And I know that that's a message that you share a lot. And I just feel so strongly about that. So I don't know, am I answering your question? Because I could get really
Totally.
detailed,
Yeah, we
but
could be here for
yeah.
hours having just this conversation for sure. So beautiful. I love that. That's a great leaping off
Mhm.
point. So, Rosie, what is your website so people can find you and learn more about your work?
Sure. It is wisdomkeepers.net.
Okay, wisdomkeepers.net, you guys. So
Mhm.
wisdomkeepers.net, go check out Rosie's work, go check out all of her cards, her books, her workbooks, her courses. Join us for our International Human Design Conference. Rosie's going to post the link for you to look at if you're watching this on Rosie's page. If you're watching this on our podcast, our link is humandesignstore.com. So come check it out, come sign up and get ready. We've got all kinds of great opportunities for you. We even have presentations happening in Spanish, in French, in German. We didn't so we're going to be really international for sure. So join us. And Rosie, what an honor. I now am feeling a lot more sad that we're not in person this year, but next year we're going to be in person and we're going to hang out for days before conference. It is, I just feel like you are such a beautiful soul sister. So thank you for gracing me personally with your presence and for being here and sharing your wisdom and your wisdom keepers with our listeners. Uh, wisdomkeepers.net, you guys. So thank you. Bye.